Since Ruben Amorim signed Viktor Gyökeres last year, the Swedish striker has scored a total of 52 goals in 55 matches. That's a joke. But when you look at Hojlund and Gyökeres' attributes, I think there could be a way that Amorim gets Hojlund to reach those similar levels. But some things need to change. They really need to change. So in this video, I want to take a look at the reason why Amorim is able to get Gyökeres to score so many goals, firstly, and why the tactics used by Amorim will be applicable to transforming Hojlund into a 20-goal-a-season striker. And I want to touch on where I feel Hojlund has struggled and why he has struggled in recent times. Let's talk about the starting position of Gyökeres in football matches. It doesn't get talked about enough, and neither does Hojlund's. Despite of them being physical yet quick strikers, Hojlund's instructions have been completely different to Gyökeres this season. This is Hojlund's passes received map from this season. This will change a lot under Amorim because, well, and for the better as well, because there's one area of focus for me when it comes to Hojlund's starting position, and it points towards a misuse of him, in my opinion, and it's this square here. Let me show you what I mean. So what Hojlund is often asked to do is to drop into these areas here. He starts off initially in this area kind of here, and he'll often sort of have those battles, and he'll kind of have that initial movement to go away, but he'll end up coming this way towards the ball in this half space, essentially. He's playing as a 10. And this exchange with Delo, I think is a good example of his role under Ten Hag, and it's a role that he will not have to do under Amorim, and I think it's going to be absolutely integral to his development because I think he is drowning a little bit. If I'm totally honest, I feel pretty passionate about this one, guys, because I think there's a real player in there. Under Ten Hag, he was often asked to move into these positions with the purpose of the end ball going into the wingers, and you can see Rashford's kind of on his way here, and actually Garnacho's on that other side is going to look to make that run as well. And when he bounces it off, his role makes him a B-side. This is the thing that I'm going to be getting at a lot in this. First of all, his body language is kind of poor because he's not side on. He's being that sort of out-and-out target man. And it's just a waste. It's just a total waste of him. And he's often facing away from goal. He's miles away from goal. And he's got his back to goal. And that really means that he's going to end up being able to sort of get side on and move quickly. Now, he has outrageous pace, but that pace never gets used because when he has this interchange where it's popped to him and he gives it back to Delo, they're not even looking for him. He's the B-side. Here's another great example of what I'm talking about. Hojlund doing what he's been asked to do, moving away from goal, wasting a lot of the best attributes from him. And look, this is fine if once that ball is played, there's loads of runners. Everyone's on their way, because he's vacated that space. But if we move it on, ball's played into him, totally safe. Brentford players feeling totally comfortable. I always had a golden rule in football. If the ball's in front of you, they haven't scored yet. And in terms of runs in behind, is it going to be Eriksen? This is why they have struggled to create chances and so many of shots have been outside of the box because it's just a bit toothless. There's not enough penetration, especially up against a low block. And in terms of runners in behind, who's got the kind of profile to hold someone off, to have that explosive pace, who's better when he's facing goal as opposed to the opposite? You're going to be shocked here. Hojlund. It's an utter waste of him. And I was losing it watching the game against Chelsea because he's just grappling and struggling. And he's got the size to go and do that. As I say, he's very similar to Gyökeres, but he's completely isolated. And now compare that to Gyökeres. He is never looking for the ball in build-up. Ever. Like, yes, he will link up at times, but it'll be a pop-off and a move. And it'll be with players that are close to him as well. And he very, very rarely has his back to goal as well. You can see him right here, side on, making that run, allowing the build-up to be dealt with by someone else, one of the two 10s. We've done a whole video on that, talking about that. You can go and check that out. He's always moving towards goal and targeting the space, which, as you can see, it then displaces the defensive line because they're worried about him. So it's not just good for him, it's good for the opposition because it then gives these players a lot of space and it also allows that area of space to continue because you've got the defenders moving backwards. We're going to come back to this clip because there's actually so much more to this clip that I can guarantee Hojlund will be asked to do in his similar role. But first, let's take a look at how different Gyökeres' starting position is to that of Hojlund and how different his dialogue with the midfield is. So this one is actually very interesting because it shows that Amorim will sometimes ask Gyökeres to be a link-up striker at times, but in a different way to the way that Hojlund has been used under Ten Hag. So instead of moving towards the ball like Hojlund, Gyökeres will stay still but with an open body position, as you can see here. And Gyökeres does make that simple move to drop and help out and link up the play. He does step into this area here. But the difference is that once that ball is played to him, he has options to lay it off who are close to him. He's got support, and then you have those runners in behind. And as I've shown you before, the difference with Hojlund is that he will have the ball, and when he gets the ball, he's got no mates. He's got no one there to help him. And if he was an out-and-out 10, then that would be great because he'd be on the half-turn, he'd make those passes. He's not that guy. He is a proper striker. He's not Alan Shearer. I'm not calling him Alan Shearer. But in terms of getting on the ball and then wanting to get into the box, that's what he deep down wants to do. The difference when you're talking about Gyökeres is that he is supported by the players around him. And so when he does drop into that area here, he's got a buddy, you know? He's got his guy. So it's a quick pop-off, and not only that, there's runners out wide as well, and that leads to penetration, baby! And not only for the team, but Gyökeres as well, because it fits his profile. He is an absolute monster. So, but this little quick interchange and then a pass in behind, he's already on the move. He's always looking to make those runs in behind, and when he drops deep, it's to take someone with him, pop it off, and then make them pay. And in the Chelsea game, actually, there were moments where Hojlund was in a position that Gyökeres would really, really love. But again, with his back to goal here. Now, if it's Gyökeres, and you've got two 10s, everyone knows the system now. You can go and watch my video if you'd like to. Essentially in those two sort of 10 areas, right, that Amorim will look to play, with actually, if you call that the wing back, out there as well. And so the two players that need to be on the ball here, it's either Casemiro, but of course it's someone in the correct profile, not Casemiro, but Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes has to be given the ball here. But it shows how lost they are. And it shows how, again, he is sacrificial for Man United right now. And if I'm getting annoyed with it, I imagine he's getting annoyed with it. Because when we move this on, you'll see he should be ready to spin. He should be side on, because he should know that Bruno Fernandes is going to get the ball and he's going to pop it into that space. Whoop-de-doo, here we go. Because, of course, he's got to play to him. Or even if he plays to him, he should be on the half-turn. You should have those kind of players on the pitch so he can play that pass as well. What happens? They pass it to Hojlund. And his hold-up play, I think in fast transition, is frightening. Much like Gyökeres. But in this moment, not. He tries a one-touch moment to Bruno Fernandes, and they lose the ball. But even when Hojlund does hold up the ball well, lays it off, it's not about him. The team isn't put together to get him goals, and he will never score goals if they continue playing like this. Fortunately, Amorim's on his way, and I don't think they will do. Another example from the recent game against Chelsea, he gets the ball here, uses his body really, really well, holds off the defender, and in this game, he was getting pelters from the centre-backs time and again. He gets side on. He plays the ball out wide. Now, imagine that's Haaland. Let's just take a second and imagine that's Haaland. Let's imagine that's your out-and-out guy. It's, it's Harry Kane. It's Ivan Toney. It's, spoken about Alan Shearer in terms of profile. Once he's laid that ball off and he's going to make the run, and he, as a physical specimen, he's so impressive, it should be pass, cross. Right? Because he's the guy, but he's not the guy. The ball goes out wide. Diallo, you've even got yourselves a little overlap here. And then Diallo ends up cutting back. And the moment's gone. Whereas, again, if we look back here for a second, what's Hojlund doing? He's made his run. And he's made his run into the gap as well. So if the ball is right, if the desire to get that ball is right, he's in a great position. But instead, the ball's getting checked back, and now his movement and his momentum in terms of making his way into the box, it's gone. Gyökeres' movement has been a huge part of his prominent goal scoring since working under Amorim. But there's more aspects to Hojlund's movement that has played a part in him only averaging 0.7 shots per game this season. Meanwhile, Gyökeres has scored more goals, 16, than Hojlund has taken shots, 4 this season. And in case you wondered, Gyökeres is averaging 4.9 shots per game this season. So we showed you an example of Gyökeres' dialogue with the midfield and how it gave him a platform to make a run. But when you look at that game again, the game against Chelsea, you've got to wonder what Man United expect from Hojlund. The ball is coming long to him here. Let me zoom in on him for you. There he is. And there's the ball. Ball coming from a long kick from Onana. And Hojlund is contesting a duel. But what's he supposed to do if he wins it? Look at the distances between himself and any other player on the pitch. Rashford and Garnacho in particular are so far away from him. In terms of a platform to lay it off, it's not there for him either. And if he wins the header, which he does win the header, it's going to go where? There. And he's safe anyway because that run hasn't happened from Garnacho. Here's another good example. Hojlund makes a proactive run from a throw-in situation. And again, look, we can zoom like how much space is there around him. It's absolutely incredible. But he's got the desire to make that run. And so he's going to make that run, which is completely fine. But then what? When you move it on, he's got the ball. Rashford isn't there to help. And it's not about Rashford. This is 4 seconds later. Where is everyone else? Where is the rest of the team? The point here is that Hojlund isn't really being asked to make runs that are going to lead to him scoring goals. He's almost been overlooked this season at Man United, with the focus being primarily on the wide players getting the goals. And we all know that this hasn't really worked. So let's see how Amorim's use of Gyökeres and the movement that he applies leads to him scoring so many goals. So, remember this clip from earlier? Well, Gyökeres' movement here is all purposeful in scoring what is a really good goal, and it's something that Amorim will absolutely look to do. So as we talk about it, close your eyes and imagine Hojlund doing exactly this, because it just fits for me. So as we spoke about, Gyökeres side on and displacing the opposition by making a run towards the goal. But it's more than that, guys. It's more than that. What he does, and you can see it here, I've kind of given it away a little bit, is the movement is, yes, it's that way, but in fact, it's that way. And that makes it very, very awkward for the defender, because he has to kind of keep his head on a swivel. He has to change his body weight to go towards Gyökeres to stay kind of tight with him. But what Gyökeres is doing here is he's pulling him out wide to then allow for that diagonal run. And he does exactly that because he knows he's stronger, he knows he's quicker than most, and he's happy to have that sort of tussle once he's getting the ball. But what he needs is that channel, and what he needs to do is create the space. And so by dragging that player away, you then change the weight balance, which makes life very difficult to then not get done by Gyökeres and allow him to get in front of you. And he does. He does exactly that. He gets on the ball and he's able to drive the ball in. And sorry, I've said the wrong thing here. Does what he does, scores goals. But Gyökeres' runs aren't exclusively down the middle, because you can often see him making runs into the wide areas to take defenders into uncomfortable areas. Again, something that Hojlund would thrive at. In fact, I can show you two examples, very similar examples of the two players doing very similar things and being bullies to the opposition. Let me show you. Because the reason that both of them would be great at doing this, Gyökeres is great at doing this, is because he knows that he can beat them physically initially before leaving them for dead for pace. And you can see that in this moment here. The ball gets played into the channel, and you can see him ready for that bump. He's more than happy to have that bump. Sounds dodgy, but you know what I'm talking about. Because he's about creating space and understanding that he is stronger. And it's about making the body weight of the opposition be affected, because you know you can beat them in a race. And as we move it along, he's now bumped him. He's able to roll him with those big old shoulders. And he absolutely leaves him for dead. In fact, he literally puts him on the floor. And look how far away he is from him. That's mental. I mean, I guess he's fallen over by this point. And of course, he scores a goal. And here's an example of Hojlund doing the exact same thing. He's right here. And if we watch him very closely, you can see, I'll try and pause it at the right moment there. He has a little look at his opponent. And he knows he wants that kind of distance between the two of them so that he can do exactly what Gyökeres has done. He goes in to bump him. He gets that arm across. He knows he can roll him. He knows he's stronger than him. He now has another look, has a little look there. He's ready for the bump again. He loves that contact. He's fine with it. He actually backs into him. It's a great example of what he can do. But he's not a battering ram. He's so much more than that. So he's able to roll him, leave him for dead. And then from this moment here, it's over. You've got a real player. And I think you've got to commit to him now. Have to commit to him now. Because as we fast forward it along, he actually carries the ball from there to the other side of the pitch. He's got it in him. The other thing that I wanted to touch on here when it comes to Hojlund being a guy who scores loads and loads of goals and can carry the team on his back, a bit like Gyökeres has in terms of, goal scoring output. I think the decisions of others has to be better than it is right now. And I just wanted to give a couple of examples because, again, I don't think anyone's trying to do anything wrong, but it's again about him being the main man. And that decision needs to be very, very clear. And actually, I think it would take a lot of pressure off, in particular, the wide players for Manchester United, who have constantly been players that need to go and get in behind and score goals for the team. And it's players that are desperate to do so. I know there's been a lot of talk about Garnacho. He's a young player, and these are growing pains. But with those growing pains, you kind of need to make the wrong decisions to make the right decisions. It's about trial and error. And this is just a great example of that, in my opinion. He's got the ball here, it's in front of him, and if Hojlund is the main man, the first thing that people are thinking about here is, how do I get the ball to him? If this is Erling Haaland, they're thinking, how do you get the ball to him? But you also trust what he's got, the physical attributes and the ability to finish. And in this moment, Garnacho isn't thinking about that, rightly or wrongly. And so at this moment here, the perfect pass is there. Just play it there. Simple pass. He's facing goal. Hojlund would step onto that. He'd be strong enough to hold off the player, and he would inevitably have an incredibly high XG chance. He doesn't. He dribbles instead. That one extra touch. And he does put the cross in. He does get the ball to Hojlund. But it's too late. It's got to be the first thought. It has to be on every single player's mind, not just Garnacho. We spoke about Diallo earlier. Diallo earlier should have been looking to get the ball to Hojlund. He wasn't. And so, look, he does get the ball to him, but it's too late. He's got to roll, and actually does really well. Some great, fleet of foot stuff. And he's able to get a shot off and actually nearly scores. But how much easier would that have been if the pass had just been there in front of him? And I think that comes back to him not being the guy. And I need to talk about the moment that I snapped watching the Manchester United-Chelsea game. I snapped on Hojlund's behalf. I was like, come on. And this is where it slapped me in the face, and this is why this video is being made. Because an attacking duel, an aerial duel for Hojlund here, he causes enough trouble that the ball goes in behind. It's in the 64th minute, it's 0-0. We move it on. Garnacho, looking to drive. It's great stuff. Hojlund is turned around, and he's on his way. And he's absolutely bodied the defender here. But not just Hojlund, you've got Rashford here as well, also making a run. The front three, all making a run. Bruno Fernandes on the ball, exciting times. Where are they all going to run? Once we get to this point here, it says everything for me. Because if we go back one, Garnacho should be making that run. Hojlund should be making a run here. And Rashford should be making a run here. It's quite simple to me. We move it on. By this point, you've got Garnacho, who's made the run, and if Hojlund is the guy, he carries on. And he drags these two players with him. And he creates so much space for Hojlund. Hojlund is in the place that he should be, as the centre-forward of Manchester United. And Rashford, for me, is a bit too central. He should be taking and making life as difficult as possible for others by getting to this area here for me. Dragging players away to, again, create the space for the number one man, Hojlund. This is where they end up. Garnacho standing still. Hojlund making a run over here. Rashford over here and then making his way back. And it all kind of was about Garnacho, who gets the ball and it's a tame shot. No fois pas. And that was the moment. That was the moment where I was like, no. Something's got to change. And it can, and I think it will. Because if you look at the goal comes from the best attributes of Rasmus Hojlund. The ball makes its way to Casemiro. Hojlund is right here battling like he has been doing the whole game. But in the space of a couple of seconds, he spins. Casemiro's got enough time on the ball and he's left two defenders for dead using all those incredible attributes that he has, getting into great space, driving, and the ball is absolutely superb from Casemiro, who I thought has struggled in that first half, had a great second half for the team. He has a good enough touch. But again, even if his touch isn't absolutely bang on, he's got the pace to cause trouble. Now, is the dive a little bit much? I think it probably is. But he gets the penalty and he gives them the lead by using what he's great at. What do we know about Hojlund? I think one of the main parts that people forget about Hojlund is just how quick he is. At Atalanta, his pace was used frequently, with the balls in behind being played to him multiple times in every single match. But we also know that he's extremely physical for his age. He can hold off those defenders, as you've just seen. But we also know that he has almost been pigeonholed into a role of a target man this season, which may have been what Erik Ten Hag wanted, but wasn't exactly conducive when trying to get the best out of him. But with what we saw from Gyökeres, you can see similarities between his and Hojlund's physical attributes, and this led to us think, why not? In terms of Hojlund fulfilling that role, we're yet to see Hojlund being asked to exploit these spaces, and I think with the correct coaching from Amorim, he could turn into an absolute monster. How many goals do you think he'll finish with this season? And what will Amorim do with Manchester United's other striker, Joshua Zirkzee?